Okay, so here we have an example of a vehicle is purchased for 120,000 Rand. It is expected that the vehicle would depreciate at 15% per annum effective. What is the vehicle's book value after 8 years? Now, the fact that there is the word depreciate there and the word book value there gives us a hint that we're going to use the depreciation formulas. So a reminder of what our depreciation formula is going to look like is FV, the future value, is equal to the present value, 1 minus the interest, and it's the effective interest to the power of n. Now, when you look at this and you're going through the process of everything, the future value is also known as the book value, and that's just how much the asset is worth at that moment in time. The present value remains as the present value. We still have the effective interest. So the effective interest rate. We still have the duration here. And we still have the M and the N units need to coincide. The difference is because it's a depreciation, the interest is negative, and that's where the negative comes from. So previously with our compound interest formula, the only thing that's really different in the situation is we don't refer to it as book value. It's just the future value. You can use the future value and book value kind of interchangeably with depreciation of and assets. And over here was a plus. Now, we can use the exact same formula there and just take note that when we have depreciation, the interest, the IM here, must just be inputted as negative. And then we can use the exact same formula. And you can see that if you had to have, your future value, and let's just write it here. The future value is equal to the present value, 1 minus IM to the N, or writing it as the future value is equal to the present value, 1 plus, and acknowledging that whatever you put into the IM here must be negative, and then to the power of N, you're going to get the same formula out. So how you want to study it and learn it and process it is up to you. But this is, again, just for the diminishing balance method of depreciation. Okay, so we have that formula and we've reminded ourselves of what the formula does. Let's go ahead and write down everything we need for the formula. So step 1, we have the vehicle is purchased for 120,000 Rand. So we have the present value is equal to 120,000. And it's going to depreciate at 15% per annum effective. Now, this interest rate is given to us as a effective interest rate, and it's a per annum effective interest rate. So we have I1, and we were given I1 in percentage. So that means that when you use it in our formula, we just have to convert it to the decimal fraction notation by dividing it by 100. So that's what we did here. We said 15 divided by 100. Then we have asking for the book values. So we need to find the future value because remember book value and future value interchangeable here. After 8 years. So we have N is equal to 8 years. We still need to always check that the N units and the M units coincide. In this case, they do because M is equal to 1, so it's yearly, and our N is represented in years. So now we can just go ahead and put it into our formula. So we're going to have the future values equal to 120,000. And in my head, I just go 1 plus, and because it's depreciation, it's minus 0.15. to the power of 8. So I just automatically go, hey, this depreciation is negative. And I do that because it matches the financial calculator approach, which we will be discussing next. And if you go ahead and put that on our calculator, we are going to get 32,698 Rand and 86 cents. So the book value after 8 years is 32,698 Rand and 86 cents. Okay, now let's discuss the difference that we're going to need to approach with our financial calculator. So let's just create some space, a fresh page. Now remember, your financial calculator has inflow and outflow of money. And invariably, if your present value was positive, so an inflow of money, your future value would show up as negative, an outflow of money. And it wasn't a huge issue in regards to which approach you used, because you could have had, your future value here being positive, and then your present value here would be negative, and your interest was always a positive amount when it was just compound interest. Now we're going to have to be careful when it comes to depreciation. Okay, so careful when it comes to depreciation, because our interest is going to be an outflow of money. We've seen that. We get an asset, the asset depreciates, so it loses monetary value. So the interest is negative and is seen as an outflow of money. So we need to make sure that there is, the proper coordination with inflow and outflow once we have the idea that this interest is an outflow of money and negative. And that means if our interest here is negative, and that's seen as an outflow of money, it would be useful if I spelled outflow correctly. So let's just try that again. Then the present value of our asset needs to be positive and seen as an inflow of money, because it's going to deteriorate. So its monetary value is going to deteriorate. So it's going to lose monetary value. And the only way we can do this on the calculator and make sure that it is correct, particularly if we see our interest negative, is to have our present value as positive. And then what's going to happen is the future value here is going to show up as negative. That's the part that you may be slightly confused about, but it is to do with the way that the financial calculator works. So it sees it as an inflow and outflow with loans and investments. So when we're doing this with depreciation, it's still going to be of opposite signs. If your present value is positive, then your future value would be negative. But we need to be consistent now, because our interest would be negative, seen as outflow of money. So that forces us to have our present value as positive there. Okay, so that's one thing just to be very, very careful of, and to acknowledge when you're doing your depreciation calculations on your financial calculator. Making sure that your financial calculator is set to the diminishing balance depreciation method, and then going through the process and acknowledging your interest is going to be negative, what you purchase your asset for will be positive, and then the book value is going to come up as negative. So let's write down everything we know for this question. We know that n is equal to 8. We know that IY is equal to 15, but it must be an outflow. So it's actually, negative 15. Now, for a second, you may be thinking, wait. On our financial calculator, and let's just write this in, the financial calculator needs the nominal interest. So it needs J in percentage. And we have I1 is equal to 15%. So we have the effective interest rate here. But remember that J is equal to IM times M. So in this case, because we have I1, you won't see a change between the effective interest rate and the nominal interest rate. But you were correct to be a little bit concerned about the fact we just took our effective interest rate and are going to put it into our financial calculator as the nominal interest rate. So just remember, you should always check that. If it was a per month effective interest rate, we would have to make a conversion. Okay, we still have the PV, which is equal to 120,000, and it's going to be an inflow. So it's going to be positive. And we have the compounding period. So we have M is equal to 1. That means in our financial calculator, our CY is equal to our PY, which is equal to 1. So this is all the information we need for our financial calculator. So let's go ahead and just write the recipe for our financial calculator, and then we'll put it in. So our recipe is second function, CA. So we're going to clear, our PYs and our CYs, etc., to get rid of the artifacts. And that's like stage 1. Stage 2 is we're going to put in the compounding periods through the payment periods. So second function PY1, enter. We're going to always check this just to get in the habit of it. And then it should come up on our screens as CY is equal to 1. And if it does, then we just push the ONC to clear the screen. And we finish stage 2. Stage 3 is going to put in all the information we know. So that's the 120,000 PV, the 8N, the negative 15 IY to account for the fact that it's depreciation. And then we're going to compute our future value. And when we do this, the value is going to come up as negative. It's going to come up as minus 32,698.86. But again, our book value here is going to be just the actual value, 32,698.86. Okay, so that was stage 3, that's stage 4, asking it to compute. So that's our recipe for our financial calculator. So next up, we're just going to do it on our financial calculators, just to confirm the entire process. And for those of you that need to see the button pushes, you can see the button presses. So now we're just going to say second function CA to clear everything. Second function PY1, enter, check our CY. We see our CY is equal to 1, which is what we want it to be. We clear our screen and put in everything else that we know. So it's 120,000 PV, and it's positive. You can see there. 8N, and then negative 15 IY. And again, you can see we put it in as a negative value for the depreciation. And then we compute our future value, and it comes up as negative because remember, if your present value is positive, your future value should be coming up as negative to do with the inflows and outflows. And it's the minus 32,698.86. So here we have an example that says an asset is purchased new for 225,000 Rand and it appreciates at 0.05% per day effective to a current book value of 112,753.43. How old is the asset? So once again, the fact that it mentions depreciation is a hint to us of what formula we need to use. So the formula is FB is equal to PV 1 minus IM to the power of N. But we need to find out how old the asset is, and that means we need N as the subject of the formula. So just a quick reminder of how to go about making N the subject of the formula. We divide through by PV because it's multiplied by the term that has N in it. So we get 1 minus IM to the N. And now we okay, we have N sitting up there. How are we going to get it down? And we're like, oh, well, we know our log rules. So we know we can take the log of both sides, and I'll take the natural log of both sides, which is ln. PV, ln 1 minus IM to the N. And the log rules state that the exponent can come to the front. So we have ln 1 minus IM. and then future value, present value, like that. And now we can take this whole term to the other side. So we have ln future value over present value, ln 1 minus im equal to n. And once again, we can see that this is pretty much exactly like the compound interest formula, with the exception of this being negative. So we could have just gone through the approach of using the compound interest formula, and when we sub in our effective interest rate, we just sub it in as a negative value. A little bit less to learn. Okay. Now let's go ahead and write down everything that we know for this question. So we're first going to do it via formula, and then we're going to do it via financial calculator. So the asset is purchased for $225,000. So we have a present value of $250,000. And it depreciates at 0.05% per day effective. So we have I, 365, and this is 0.05%, so it's in percent, so we still need to convert it to decimal fraction notation if we're going to use our formula. So that's 0.0005. Remember, we're dividing it by 100. And its current book value is 112,753.43. So we have the future values equal to 112,753.43, and we want to know what n is. So we have all our information sitting there for us. But do we? Yes, we don't have to check our m and that n corresponding, remember, right now. We'll need to look at that a little bit later because we're looking for n. So if you're feeling like you're missing a piece of your formulas and or process, it's because we're looking for n. So usually we'd be like, hey, we need to check that m and n coincide. We don't have to in this case because we're working out n. Now we can go ahead and put it into our formula. So we have, not starting our formula from scratch, we already did the working out for n as the subject of the formula. So we have n is equal to ln, the future value, which is 112,753.43, divided by the present value, which is 225,000. And then we have this divided by the ln, and it's 1 minus 0.0005. And that is going to give us 1381.45 days. Why is it in days? Because our m was in days, because our m was 365. Okay. So we're now going to redo this, but we're going to redo this using our financial calculator. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to move this across because it has all the information that we need now still on the screen. And I'm going to show you the difference that in the information that you'll need for your financial calculator. So we still need the present value, but we also need to indicate that the present value is going to be the inflow. So it's going to be positive. And if the present value is the inflow of money, the interest is going to be an outflow of money. So our IY is going to be an outflow, which means it's going to be negative. But our IY is the nominal interest rate, is J in percent. So right now we have the effective interest rate, so we need to convert it. So we have to have J is equal to IM times M, which is, and I'm going to use the percentage one so that I don't have to convert it to percent before I put it into my calculator. So 0.05 times by 365, and that's going to give us our nominal interest rate in percent, which is 18.25%. So just bearing in mind, I use the percentage one So I don't have to convert it to percent. If I use the decimal fraction notation version, I would still have to convert it to percent before I would use it in my financial calculator. So remember, your financial calculator is the nominal interest rate in percent. And we have indicated, because it's depreciation, we're going to have to put negative first. Then we have our future value. And our future value, because our present value is positive, our future value is going to be negative. So we're going to say future value is an outflow. That means it's going to be negative. So when you type in everything into our financial calculator, it'll be 22500 for our present value. It's going to be minus 18.25 for our interest, and it's going to be minus 112,753.43 for our future value. And we don't know what n is. We're going to solve for n. So let's just move our screen across and write down our recipe for our financial calculator. So you wouldn't have to write down the recipe, but I do it so that you can see it. So we're always going to first do our clearing of our memory, in particular of our PY and CY, IY, etc. variables, by saying second function CA. That's our stage 1 process. Our stage 2 is going to be putting in our compounding periods. And you'll notice I forgot to write it down in the yellow side here. But we had that M is equal to 365. So our CY is equal to our PY, which is equal to 365. So we have second function, PY, 365, enter, and check, and clear our screen. And that's stage 2. So stage 2 was entering our payment periods and our compounding periods. Stage 3 is putting in everything else. So that's 225,000 PV. That's plus or minus. And use the plus or minus button instead of the subtraction button. 18.25 IY plus or minus 112,753.43 future value. That's stage 3 over, and stage 4 is asking it to compute what we want. So to compute N. And then it's going to come up as 1381.45. And that's in days because we entered our compounding period as 365. So the units of this N that pops up here will coincide with the units of the CY that we inputted. So it would be days. And now let's just go and do it on our financial calculator. So let's just make some space and go through the process now of typing it into our financial calculator so we can see how the recipe matches, what we input. Once again, we're going to go second function CA to clear our PYs and RYs and everything. Then we're going to put in our compounding amounts by putting in second function PY, 365, enter. Push down to check that our CY is 365, so it's compounded daily. We're going to clear our screen. And then we're going to put in everything that we know. So it's 225,000 PV. And it's positive because it's seen as it's an asset that we have. And then it's deteriorating. So we're going to say minus 18.25 IY. So that's the depreciation, and it's an outflow of money because it's losing its value. And then we're going to put in its book value, which is its future value. And because our present value was positive, it's going to be negative. So we have minus 112,753.43, the future value. And then we ask it to compute N. And now you see it's 1381.45, and that is corresponding to our compounding periods. So it's 1381.45 days. It's book value